Welcome to Make Your Point Season 3, the quarterfinals. I'm Priyanka Lala, and I'm delighted to once again be your chairperson. It is thrilling to see all of our astounding debate teams back at the Dagger Auditorium UE ready to compete for the title of Make Your Point National Champion. Once again, congratulations to all teams for making it to this stage of competition. You have demonstrated your abilities, and we are eager for your contributions today as you all tackle pertinent topics. Now to the quarters. As 6 teams go head-to-head in this televised National Secondary Schools debate, we expect teamwork, compelling arguments, and passion from all of our debaters. The schools participating in this episode, vying for the 4 spots in the semi-finals, are Fatima College, San Fernando Central Secondary School, Naparima Girls High School, Astor Boys College, San Fernando, St. Mary's College, and Presentation College, Chaguanas. Now, let's meet our judges. Jason Julian, Group Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Business Generation First Citizens. Neeraj Tiwari, AmCham CEO. And Jonah Bujrat, Debate Team Captain and Make Your Point Season 2 National Champion. And of course, joining me on stage is our timekeeper, Miss Jamie Simmons. Viewers, before we begin, a reminder that all quarterfinalists were invited to draw randomly from our ballot box to determine their topic and position ahead of this competition stage. The debate, similarly to the preliminary rounds, will be conducted as follows. Once invited to do so, the proposition will speak for up to 4 minutes. Then, the opposition will speak for up to 4 minutes to present their opening. Both teams will then be given 5 minutes to confer among themselves before being allowed 2 minutes each to summarize. The judges will then make their decision to determine which team advances to the semi-final round. As always, the judges' decision is final. Debaters, you are required to only speak when invited to do so at the lectern, and stay within your time limits. Our timekeeper will ring the bell once to indicate that you have 1 minute left to conclude. When your time is up, you will hear the bell ring twice. After which, a continuous ring, should you go over the allotted time. Members of the House, while I hope you enjoy this quarterfinal round, please remain respectful and sensitive to our debaters and judges. I now invite Presentation College Chaguanas to the stage. I now invite Naparima Girls High School to the stage. The motion is: parents should also be punished for their children's misdeeds. Will the proposition speaker, Niall Bagan of Presentation College Chaguanas, please take the floor?
Parents are like sculptors shaping clay. They are responsible for their children's development and misdeeds, just as a flawed sculpture reflects the hands of the creator rather than the clay alone. Allow me to define the key terms of the motion: children's misdeeds and punishment. As defined by the United Nations International Child Emergency Fund, UNICEF, children's misdeeds are any unethical or unlawful behavior exhibited by anyone under the age of 18 years old. As categorized by Oxford Dictionary, punishment is any penalty that has legal and societal repercussions. We as a proposition strongly argue that both parents and children should be punished for the misdeeds of the child. We will discuss parental negligence, the dangers of not enforcing it as a serious offense, and show how punishment can help develop a child's cognitive autonomy. Now, allow me to set the record straight, ladies and gentlemen. The proposition are not concerned with anything, with blaming parents for everything their child does wrong. For example, if my good friend Vaishnava's girlfriend were to post his parents online for him being unfaithful, we are not concerned with that sort of punishment. Rather, if Vaishnava hypothetically was a bully in school, we, the proposition, are concerned if the parents do not properly intervene and help that situation and stop it from persisting. We then say that Vaishnava and parents should be punished for Vaishnava's misdeeds, which leads me into my first point, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever heard of parental negligence? I'm sure you have, because parental negligence isn't anything new. Parental negligence is already punishable by law. Source from Guardian Media Limited and Children Act Section 56. If the court is of the view that a parent fails to exercise a certain degree of reasonable care or supervision, when their child commits an offense, that parent can be charged with parental negligence to pay any fine, damages, or cost instead of the child. There you have it. Parental negligence is a law. Both the parent and the child are punished. Take us the recent Florida school shooting, where the parents of the child who committed the shooting was sentenced to at least 10 years in prison for not securing a firearm at home and for acting indifferently to signs of that child's deteriorating mental health. That is, in a word, parental negligence. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago today? Crime, crime, and more crime. And what do the mothers of these alleged criminals have to say? Well, he was a nice child, a good boy. Ladies and gentlemen, dangers such as an increase in crime levels can occur when we don't consider parental negligence as a serious offense. Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, quote Loba Aaron Farrington, says that they followed a study about a cohort of boys from childhood into young adulthood. It showed that those who experience neglect and family instability contribute to a cycle of poverty and crime. So in a world where parents should not be punished, as my opposition would argue, that the dangers can be seen on an individual and societal level. Now, finally, let us address the other part of the motion on why children should be punished for their misdeeds. Ladies and gentlemen, punishment serves as a vital role in how a child understands what is right from what is wrong, stated by psychologist John Michael Robacard. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you remember the sculptor analogy at the beginning of my speech? Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes sculpting requires tools, and punishment can be used as that tool to foster a child's cognitive autonomy and moral reasoning. Do not allow the opposition to say that we should punish one party or the other. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker, Shamaya Charles of Naparima Girls High School, please take the floor?
Good morning, esteemed judges and my worthy opponents. The motion, should parents also be punished for their children's misdeeds, is an inflammatory topic polarizing our nation today. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. The proposition, as Brutus has tried to sway you. However, we, the opposition, like Mark Antony, are here to reject their claims. While it is undeniable that parents play a critical role in the upbringing of their children, let us not confuse parental responsibility with culpability. Imposing collective punishment on parents for the misdeeds of their children violates the tenets of personal responsibility. The United Nations Convention strongly advocates against the collective punishment of parents for the actions of their children, as such practices violate both the parental and child rights. And I do not think the proposition is aware that what they are boldly advocating for has been previously attempted, examined, and ultimately proven to be ineffective. In the late 1940s and 1950s, communities across the US passed legislations called Punish the Parent laws, and guess what? They failed. As Time magazine reported, juvenile vandalism peaked after parental laws for vandalism were enacted. Does that sound like it was effective? No. These laws violated a fundamental principle of common law, that one person cannot be punished for the acts of another. And according to the Cambridge Dictionary, misdeeds is defined as an act that is criminal or bad. Ladies and gentlemen, bad? Let me show you a list of misdeeds here. 4-year-old Chloe pushed Betty off the swing. 8-year-old Kyle vandalized his school desk. He wrote, "I love Peppa Pig." 16-year-old Lola cheated on an exam. Does it sound reasonable or realistic to punish parents for these misdeeds? We cannot choose which misdeeds we choose to punish parents for. So according to the proposition, first, parent punishes child, then teacher punishes child, and then the government punishes the parent. So it seems to me like punishment just sharing like school box lunch on a Monday morning. Furthermore, parental liability does not consider the plight of low-income families already grappling with financial hardships. Imagine these parents having to scrape together funds to cover exorbitant fines for offenses such as vandalism committed by their children. Please note that failure to pay these fines results in imprisonment, exasperating their dire circumstances. And I asked the proposition, what do you think would happen to these families? Pain and sorrow. In Texas, parents can be held liable for property damage caused by their child's intentional actions. Starting at age 10, liability is capped at $25,000 plus attorney fees. Bold of the proposition to assume that every parent can magically cough up close to $25,000 every time their child damages property due to the inability to regulate their emotions at the tender age of 10. As the old people say, you make the child, not the mind. Both the WHO and UNICEF affirm that adolescents especially engage in independent decision-making, influenced by their peers and external environments. Yet the proposition aims to cast blame at parents, as Professor Reddock, former head of gender development studies at UWI says. Stop blaming parents for their children's actions when majority are trying. Let's redirect our focus to helping children overcome their challenges through more robust social services. In conclusion, the proposition seeks for a scapegoat for the societal issues affecting youth. They have created a mob-like thirst for justice, misplaced justice. Punishing parents alongside their children is both punitive and unjust, offering no deterrent to juvenile misconduct. It is unfair to place this burden on parents who are unaware and unassociated with their minors' actions. I urge the proposition to aim to solve these issues, not give out unjust penalties like hot doubles. Thank you.
Teams, you now have 5 minutes to confer. And to you, our viewing audience, we take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Make Your Point Season 3, the quarterfinal round. Both teams have had 5 minutes to confer and are now ready to summarize. Will the proposition speaker to summarize, Vaishnava Ramchas of Presentation College, please take the floor.
My name is Vaishnava, and I am here today to prove to you why parents should also be punished for their children's misdeeds. Now to start, the opposition has stated that parents play critical roles in their children's upbringing. They have also stated, however, that parents shouldn't be aware of what their children are doing, and instead it should be society and this and that. But they haven't offered any alternative, ladies and gentlemen. Well, who should raise the children if not the parents? The dog? The neighbor? Ladies and gentlemen, as my first speaker stated, parents, as according to the law, have a duty to provide reasonable care and supervision to their children. If they do not fulfill this duty, this is parental negligence, which once again is against the law. And in accordance with the law, if children were to perform misdeeds, parents should and are also punished. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not your opinion. Children's Act Section 56. We didn't pull this argument out from the Bush and Central. And the law exists for a reason. Ladies and gentlemen, as my first speaker stated, and as the opposition also agreed, misdeeds are unlawful acts. We care about little Timmy writing Peppa Pig on his desk. We care about unlawful acts, which, as my first speaker stated, there are many dangers in society when parental negligence is not upheld as an offense. I'm not sure if they want to take that scale and change the justice system, but however, the justice system exists for a reason. Because as my first speaker stated, these dangers include crime and delinquent acts. This leads me to my last point. They have come and stated that we seem like we want to execute parents. However, they didn't even define misdeeds. As we had a lovely laptop over there, we actually looked it up. They defined corporal punishment and not punishment from the WHO and the United Nations. We have not stated to execute parents for their children's misdeeds. However, punishment, as my first speaker said, it can be a tool to help both the sculptor and the clay grow. It can mold the sculptor to become the best sculptor that they can and help the clay become the best person they can in society. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Isabel Leasing of Naparima Girls High School, please take the floor.
The proposition are talking about neglect. However, what about cases where parents are doing all that they can, and especially in stories like a case with a single mother? I would like to tell you a story. A mother wishing for her young son to be educated. CNC3 reported his suspension of 12 days for a string of misconduct, possibly emulating the violent actions observed in his surroundings as they were hostile. His mother, desperate, pleaded for help. As a single mother without recourse, I quote, "I have not been able to reach my son. What will be his future? I don't want my child to fall victim to being a murderer." As my colleague stated, you make the child, but you do not make their mind. This is a scale of justice. On one side, we have parental influence trying to steer their children away from juvenile delinquency. On the other hand, we have external influences like friends, social media, drugs, gangs, that often exert a far more significant impact on a child's choice. Newsday attested that teenagers are significantly influenced by their social circles, valuing peer acceptance over parental guidance. How can the proposition overlook the imbalance of blame? Parents cannot always compete with influencers, music, and the ever-evolving trends. Can we deny the broader societal influences that contribute to these influences simply to have a face to prosecute in the name of justice, ladies and gentlemen? You simply cannot. Correlation does not imply causation. Factors from the home being present does not mean that they are the sole cause of delinquency. Children do not live in a vacuum. As a society, we must make it our mission to help all children feel loved and have the chance to be successful. It takes a village to raise a child. Raising a child goes far beyond the home with mommy and daddy. They possess autonomy and agency, for they are individuals, ladies and gentlemen. Reflect on the imbalance of this scale as the weight of external influences overshadow the parental influences. Thank you.
This concludes the first of 3 head-to-heads in our quarterfinal round of Make Your Point Season 3. Judges, your feedback.
I think, Prez, if you all had spent some time defining the types of things that you would recommend parents be held liable for, as opposed to leaving it open, and maybe you took it for granted that the legislation does that. But for the audience, what it does is it leaves an opening for NAPS to talk about Peppa Pig on the desk and the like, right? And that to me was a gap that NAPS exploited well. With NAPS, I think that you all were comprehensive in how you dealt with it. Both of you tried to use examples from the UN, and because you used examples even in the opening from the UN, it counteracted some of the UNICEF examples and the like quite well. But overall, very high quality debate. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing whichever one of you moves on, or both.
I found the challenge, and I'm going to start with the press team. The challenge I found was the unsaid, the body language, the eye contact. So when I looked at the gentleman walk to the podium, the lectern, you look defeated. You look defeated going, and you look defeated coming back. And so to be mindful of, even as you stand from your seat, stand as though you're going to win. When you walk from the lectern and you go back, walk back as though you've won. And I found when you stop speaking, you let your body language, unfortunately, I think, speak negatively. I love the points raised. Take your time sometimes for impact. Because you can have a really good point in making your point, but if you are rushing the point, it could get lost. It could get lost in the flow. In terms of the young ladies, I love the conviction at the podium, at the lectern. And the conviction at times helped to make the point emphasized. But I think you all may have had the other problem in that, not always fire. So the fire is good at times for emphasis, but if it's all fire, then it's an inferno. So sometimes you may have to slow down even the fire and have a slower cook. Let the flames be steady and not always blazing. But I like the use of the props though. So the props help to emphasize for the listener the influence and impact. From the Peppa Pig scroll to the use of the scales and I'm not sure if it's marbles or pebbles, but it helped. And I think it helped provide a good impact for points.
All right, well, start with presentation, Shagonas. First, I'll commend you on what you did well. I believe it was well structured, starting off with a thesis, your definitions, and avoiding what I think would have been a fundamental mistake, where you tried to set the premise as it's not just parents being punished, but children as well. We're not saying that only children should be punished. If you had left that open, they would have exploited that, so it's good that you avoided that mistake. I like to use international examples and sufficient corroboration from the UN and other places. As for Naparima Girls, I love the delivery. I felt the conviction was there. The only thing I would say to counterbalance the conviction is to know, again, when to slow down, when to have the little more genuine moments, heart to heart with the audience. To have that tonal variety is always a good thing to practice, right? Because sometimes if you're trying to stay at one tone, even if it's a very convicting and commanding tone, it will still be monotone in the sense that it's just one thing the audience is hearing. Sometimes if you fluctuate a little bit and all of a sudden you drop down to a little more sincere and then you raise back up again when it's necessary, that has a bit of a better effect. So overall, well done, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, judges, and congratulations to both teams. We now take another short break, and when we return, it's our second head-to-head. St. Mary's College versus Fatima College. Welcome back to Make Your Point Season 3, the quarterfinals. The motion is online learning more beneficial than in-person classes? Will the proposition speaker, Terrell Thomas of St. Mary's College, please take the floor?
This stage reeks of what you might ask? Privilege. Ladies and gentlemen, picture this. A child waking up at 4 a.m., catching 2 taxis from Grandi to Port of Spain, exhausted before the school bell even rings. Hey, drive, bus street or main road. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to picture this because this is my reality. Now imagine me at home, safe, focused, engaged. This screen in front of me is more than just pixels. It's a lifeline for students in Grandi, in Tabaquite, in Toko. Without it, we are left struggling. But I wouldn't expect the opposition to understand. You see, a trip from Westmoreland to St. James is not that far. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Cambridge Dictionary, beneficial means helpful, useful, or good. But to many, it means being equally equipped as their fellow counterparts. A solution? Here, I present to you the Student Hub, big up Cohen Springer one time, where a personal online interview was conducted by us, the proposition, with Mr. Cohen Springer himself, where he highlighted that the day before the CSEC maths exam, there seemed to be a skyrocket in views of his maths channel every single year. Shocking? Not to me. And with the top students in Cape this year being taught by the Student Hub themselves, and now her, Anaya Couchman, look up online, working as a teacher under the Student Hub themselves. Does this not prove my point? But wait, I now catch. When you really check it, $250 a month for online lessons is far less than spending $30 every single day just on travel. You do the maths, and with 55% of students this year leaving CSEC without a full certificate compared to online learning in 2020 where it was 10% better and 10 times harder, we can't just sit down and do nothing. Even Mr. Conman Burt, or Minister of Finance, in the recent 2024 budget stated, and I quote, "The integration of an e-book platform into our education system will transition education from a textbook-dependent and instructor-centered approach to a more interactive and student-centric approach, preparing our students for the digital era." The opposition may claim that online learning risks identity theft or make it hard to know who is who, but secure platforms, two-factor authentication, and strict monitoring tools address these concerns. Online learning promotes digital literacy, teaching students how to safeguard their identities and navigate virtual spaces responsibility. Prevention is better than cure. They might also pull out the pity card and say,
but no internet access or access to devices. Each sector in Trinidad and Tobago and each Caribbean countries has libraries equipped with working computers and internet access. These resources are readily available, but students must take the initiative. No one is saying it's perfect, but the tools for success are within reach if we want to reach it. Fatima, let's talk about safety. Just this year, we witnessed the shooting at St. Francois College or the flooding at St. George's classroom or the rise of suicide from bullying. Should I go on? Students are terrified. Education is disrupted. Online learning offers a safer alternative, free from the risks of violence, natural disasters, unsafe environments, gang violence. Should I go on? But with the interest of 4 minutes in mind, let me move on. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not just about convenience. It's about protecting our students' right to learn while protecting our students. We are 20% of this world's population, but 100% of our future. Many students in Trinidad and Tobago, especially those working part-time or helping with family responsibilities, struggle to balance school and home life. Online learning gives them a chance to manage their time better. Instead of being stuck to a rigid schedule for 8 hours a day, it means they no longer have to choose between helping out their single mother at home or getting an education. They can do both. So, when you hear the opposition talk about benefits of in-person learning, ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, benefits for whom? Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker, Sterling Russell of Fatima College, please take the floor?
All protocols are... Sorry, my Wi-Fi dropped. Remember those days? The opposition does not believe that online learning is more beneficial than in-person classes because of the challenges the student faces. Imagine if all schools were to scrap physical classes and go solely into online learning. There's no need to imagine because we all live this, unfortunately, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. How engaged are you behind the screen? These days, sat in front of the computer screen, your mic off, your camera off, and you're sleeping. An article from Frontiers entitled Engagement in Online Learning, Student Attributes and Behaviors During COVID-19 reported decreases in live lecture engagement and attendance, with 72% of students reporting that low engagement during lectures hurt their online experience. In-person classes allow students the opportunity to work with each other and to interact and cooperate. For CSEC exams, students are expected to complete their phys, their chemistry and their biolabs, and do practical subjects like food and nutrition and electrical. How disciplined are you behind the screen? Students, especially those below the tertiary level, need a proper adult influence in the classroom in order to stay focused. The responsibility is now passed on to the parent to make sure the student is actually paying attention. And as the opposition stated, how is a single mother supposed to take on all that if she's dealing with multiple responsibilities and has to make sure her child is still focused because the child wants to go and play Fortnite with the camera off? Can everybody thrive behind the screen? A study entitled Challenges of Online Learning for Students with Disabilities During the COVID-19 Pandemic stated that during online learning, students with disabilities experience obstacles and challenges in accessing learning, such as limitation of assistive technologies and the internet, as well as the availability of materials. It also stated, being exposed to intensive online learning caused students with disabilities to spend more time in front of the computer, which potentially led to difficulties in understanding the material. Because I can't drop out and let Cohen Springer handle everything for me. I still have to be enrolled in a school. How long can you stay on the screen for? Digital eye strain, also known as DES, is an entity encompassing visual and ocular symptoms arising due to the prolonged use of digital electronic devices. It is characterized by dry eyes, blurring of vision, and headaches. With lockdown restrictions during the pandemic, digital learning became the norm for almost 2 years, as we all know. While the DES prevalence amongst children alone rose by 50 to 60%, and this is according to PubMed Central article entitled Digital Eye Strain, a comprehensive review. How socially connected are you behind a screen? Online school completely harms the very point of group projects to cooperate and interact with our peers. In-person classes allows you to get one-on-one feedback from teachers, and I quote, "When children are not able to interact with their teachers and their peers directly, their learning suffers. when they are not able to interact with their teachers and their peers at all, their learning loss may become permanent, said Catherine Russell, UNICEF Executive Director. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition do not believe that online learning is effective and rather better than in-person classes because students suffered. We suffered. Our grades suffered. Our development suffered. The proposition suffered. Don't let the acting and the antics gaslight you into forgetting what we all experienced. Thank you.
Viewers, we now take a short break while both teams confer for 5 minutes before summary. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Make Your Point Season 3. Both teams have had 5 minutes to confer and are now ready to summarize. Will the proposition speaker to summarize, Malik Shabadi of St. Mary's College, please take the floor.
Round of applause? No, it's the sound of the opposition closing doors, doors of opportunity. The proposition stands here representing all students. This isn't about replacing schools, but about giving everyone a fair chance regardless of their area code. Over 30% of students, schoolless. And with a shortage of teachers, teacherless. Online learning takes this problem and spits it out. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine traveling every day with all this weight on your back. This bag is filled with books, notes, and the burden of expectations. But with online technology, this weight can be dropped. No more exhausting commutes that leave students drained before they even step foot into a classroom. Instead, all the resources they need can fit right here. Claiming that students can learn through a screen overlooks how adaptable and effective online education has become. The thing is, many students already learn through screens outside of school via YouTube, educational apps, and digital resources due to the incompetence of our school system. Modern online platforms provide interactive, engaging tools that can cater to diverse learning styles. Learning depends on dedication, not desks. Ladies and gentlemen, parents are shelling out money for transportation, uniforms, costs, and school supplies every term. With online learning, these costs are significantly reduced. This shift can lighten the financial load for all. To continue, in-person classes advocate for 8-hour learning. However, these methods are too crude to be used and should be abandoned. But don't take it from me. Take it from Frederick J. Kelly, the inventor of this 8-hour structure, who said, these methods are too crude to be used and should be abandoned. And you know what, Fatima, I really wished I could have remembered your last point. Maybe I should have recorded it, like in an online class. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Matthew Renwick of Fatima College, please take the floor.
You say it was harder to pass online, yet you neglect to mention the lack of paper tools during those online years. Moreover, 30,000 students missing from physical schools, over 70,000 students lacked laptops during the times of the pandemic, missing out on vital information within the school. Furthermore, you speak of privilege, but what of the parents who do not have the privilege to stay at home and monitor their children to ensure focus? And Kerwin Springer's classes are $2,400 TT for simply 8 subjects. How much was transport again? Let us not fall for the proposition's optimistic view of online learning. They may try to sell you convenience, but let's not forget what we truly experienced. The proposition claims that technology can bridge the gap, the educational gap, but the reality is different. Countless students in Trinidad and Tobago not only struggle to connect to the Wi-Fi, but to their education. Many face unreliable connections, leaving them unable to access lessons, and in these moments, education became a privilege rather than a right. While they tout flexibility as a benefit, is it really worth the learning loss that we had to face? During the pandemic, we were present physically, but mentally absent, staring at blank screens with our microphones and cameras off, disconnected, disengaged, detached. These 3 words describe a collective experience that became the norm for many students and teachers alike, who for the course of the pandemic had to bear with classes of blank screens such as this. We do not need research to tell us this because we experienced it ourselves. Finally, the proposition may ask us again to embrace online learning, but I ask, can we really risk another generation? Thank you.
This concludes the second of 3 head-to-heads in our quarterfinal round. Judges, your feedback.
Starting with St. Mary's, I like that you start with beckoning the audience to envision themselves in a scenario. That usually does well to get them involved and get them aligned with your train of thought. The distance problem, the Wi-Fi problem, safety issues, I like that you address those within the argument, and also I felt you did a good job of anticipating what would have been some of their points with regards to the lack of device availability. So it's good that you anticipated that and included that as a point so as to disarm them before they could have even showed that they were armed. So that was well done. However, I felt that the one thing that was missing was exploring how the social factor or the lack of the social factor plays into the argument. So I think one of the most pivotal, most crucial parts or points of this argument would have been how does either motion contribute or take away from the socialization of the peers, of pupils overall. Fatima, I enjoyed the presentation as well. I like that you focused on lack of engagement and more so the single mother rebuttal to say that, well, guess what? The same single mother that you're saying trying to help by keeping them away from school, you're giving her an additional responsibility to keep these students engaged. And who's to say that she'll be up for that task? I felt that was good that you addressed that. The one thing I would say, though, is that you did not mention the social factor. I think the most convincing point was to say to take children out of the school environment would be to take out one of the most essential forms of socialization that they have in their upbringing. So they missed out on it, but you all didn't pick up, and so it didn't really expose their error.
We're going to start with the gentleman at St. Mary's. Great opening by both speakers, got us paying attention from the jump, held our attention throughout. The one thing I would say is that in your delivery, just be mindful of the cadence of the delivery, because there's a lot of conviction, great points being made throughout, but the cadence could be a little bit quick at times. So at times it felt as though you were rushing to make the point versus being confident in making the point. If I were to turn to the Fatima boys, well done. I'm going to single out the opening speaker, Sterling, yes. I love the confidence that you came to the lectern with. I think you set a really good tone in terms of leading the team. You presented your argument succinctly, and you good use of pace of language. So you emphasize where necessary. You threw a jab every once in a while, and it landed. Well-researched arguments, and I found the arguments felt that it was clear that you knew what to hit and when. Your colleague, I would say, really good in terms of the delivery. Your confidence could have been stronger. I love the use of the prop at the end because it brought home to the audience the points you were making that, yes, this is a great tool, but it has its downside. And the imagery was something that that all resonated with us all because we lived through that period of time.
There were two things. So it was well researched, well put together. You all came prepared, CIC. There were two things, though, that for me are important. One more so than the other. The first one is that, it's a debate, it's a discussion, and it kind of felt like you all approached it like spoken word. So you came rehearsed and you had a cadence, to use Jason's word, that was like a spoken word presentation. So it wasn't that you were coming to have that kind of discussion. But the second, I think, speaks to the heart of what make your point is. I felt that by making it a class attack, for me, you were going to have to come really good after that. Because this is an important discussion, education, and how we make education equitable is at the core of the future of our society. And it matters to you all as young people. It matters to us as a society. And to just ad hominem make this about class, I felt is what sometimes undermines our ability to have discussions, whether it be class or race or geography. And I didn't appreciate that personally, because it's one of the things that I feel holds our society back. For Fatima, I thought you all were more measured in your approach. Matthew, I really liked your delivery in the end. I thought you addressed the points. This is what a summary is supposed to be. You respond to the points that went before, and your delivery was fluctuated. So there was authenticity, there was emotion, but there was also some facts in there. And so I thought you did very well in that regard. And Sterling, your presentation was really clearly well prepared and thoughtful, and you came and you gave your points as you saw it. So good job overall.
Thank you, judges, and congratulations to both teams for their thought-provoking presentations. Let's give them one more loud round of applause. We now take another short break, and when we return, it's our third and final head-to-head for the quarterfinal round of Make Your Point Season 3. San Fernando Central Secondary School versus Astor Boys College, San Fernando. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to Make Your Point Season 3. The motion is: candidates for Prime Minister must hold a public debate. Will the proposition speaker of San Fernando Central Secondary School, Aisha Brathwaite, please take the floor?
Where there's information, there is enlightenment. For good ideas and true innovation, you need human interaction, conflict, argument, and debate. By Artifete Yayaga, the former president of Kosovo. A debate is a structured contest over a policy or an issue where one side is proposing and the other opposing, according to the European Commission. In the United States, presidential debates are a long-standing tradition where candidates outline policies and challenge opponents on key issues before millions of viewers. Americans expect this as a crucial part of vetting their future leader. Other countries, such as France, Malta, and the Netherlands, engage in public debates like this. So why should citizens of TNT settle for less? Prime ministerial debates could shift TNT's political culture from its tribal nature to one of productive conversations. In the Express dated August 4, 2020, the headlines read, "Voter turnout key to victory." Ladies and gentlemen, at our nation's last general election, the EBC reported a mere 58.04% voter turnout. TNT's voter turnout is critically low. A 2020 poll by the Trinidad Express revealed 16% of voters were still undecided on the eve of election day. A study done at the Oxford Academic demonstrated that the base exposure has a positive impact on the political attitudes of voters. Honorable judges, a Newsday report in 2020 stated, young citizens expressed that the main political parties lack connection to today's youth and fail to inspire through progressive policy making. We are tired of hearing promises shelled out like peas in the hustings. We are tired of being directed to vote based on loyalty to party and racial divide. Aren't we tired? Prime ministerial debates can be a breath of fresh air for undecided voters and those who want to vote on policy and not personality. A public debate is a forum for candidates to challenge one another on pressing subjects like crime and TNT and gives candidates a chance to display their critical thinking. Let it be known that this debate is not meant to be a presentation of the party's manifesto. It is not meant to be a resume to list out all the projects they have completed and the roads they've paved over the past 5 years. For this reason, my colleagues and I dare to propose a public prime ministerial debate structure. All leaders of political parties would be given specific topics on the day of the debate. Prior to the debate, each Each party will have a representative to negotiate particulars to ensure consensus. Each debate will feature live fact checkers, be broadcasted unedited to ensure accountability, and of course, the presence of a non-partisan moderator to keep candidates on point and ensure the smooth running of the debate. In closing, a mandate for prime ministerial public debates can change the archaic way of choosing our leaders and build a political landscape where every perspective is valued, where accountability is demanded, and where every citizen can engage meaningfully in the democratic process. My dear viewers, I leave you with this. Remember, we are not simply voting out a government. We are voting in a vision for tomorrow. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker, Mario Monroe of Astor Boys College, San Fernando, please take the floor?
As leadership expert Ron Askins beautifully said, the best leader may not make the best debater, and the best debater may not make the best leader. Now I know, ladies and gentlemen, upon hearing the motion today, you are automatically shifted towards the proposition, especially since we currently on a debate TV show. But let me change your mind. So, what are the main purposes of a public prime ministerial debate? According to CBC News and the BBC, the three main purposes of a public prime ministerial debate are: 1, candidates to share their policies and views on political subjects; 2, hold candidates accountable in the eyes of the public for their past decisions; and 3, most importantly, to influence voter choice. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you would be interested to know that public prime ministerial debates fail fantastically at sharing their policies on certain subjects. This is evident in the Canadian federal election, where only 12% of debate time was dedicated to policy discussions, while 44% of time was spent with personal attacks and inappropriate comments. They mentioned the US presidential elections, but how many, even with supervised moderation, how did that turn into a clown show like it did, ladies and gentlemen? What we need to understand is that in TNT, an article by The Guardian published More Heat Than Light, it said that during the 2020 general election, voters felt uncompelled, ladies and gentlemen, within the parliamentarian system to look at the parliamentarian debates. You know why? Because there were inappropriate comments being made, because there were personal attacks. If that's the parliament, what do you think is going to happen when we have a public debate? Secondly, public debates fail fantastically at holding candidates accountable for their actions, with candidates making sweeping promises and statements without being held accountable. According to The Guardian, many viewers felt that the general election does not give voters enough opportunity, candidates enough opportunity to be held accountable for their previous actions, a sentiment echoed by the Hansard Society study, which found that only 12% of questions asked in the 2010 UK general election debates focused on holding the incompetent prime minister accountable for their previous actions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get something straight. A debate is a performance. What we're doing right now and what Asia did is a performance. We are performing to you, to persuade you. They said policy, not personality. But how do you win a debate? With personality. And you'll be delighted to know that charismatic debaters often win these debates. And as James 3:10 tells us, the tongue has the power of life and death. And choosing a charismatic debater over an experienced policymaker is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Harvard Business Week said charisma is not a reliable indicator of leadership abilities, and that leaders who rely too heavily on charm and charisma may make tough decisions when it's time. A notable example is Hugo Chavez in our backyard, who was known for his exceptional debating skills. But you know what happened under him? Venezuela's inflation went to 1,000%. Finally, public debates have very little to no impact on voter choice. According to the British election study, found that only 2% of voters in the 2010 UK general election felt that the leaders' debates significantly influenced their decisions. In the Australian Election Commission, only 1% of voters changed their minds due to a public debate. In TNT, 70% of viewers said that they would vote for their candidate regardless of what their policies and what they said. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make it clear. We're not opposed to debating here. In fact, we like debating. We are just saying that public debates for Prime Minister are not necessary. Here are better alternatives. In 2010, the Congress of the People published a detailed manifesto of their plans and their policies. This provides interesting insight to their
policies. Thank you.
Insightful remarks from both teams. Our teams now have 5 minutes to confer before summary. So to you, our viewing audience, we take a short break. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to Make Your Point, Season 3. Both teams are now ready to summarize. Will the proposition speaker to summarize, Jabari Brathwaite of San Fernando Central Secondary School, please take the floor.
Mario, you may be performing, but we are the proposition are here to advocate for the furthering of our nation's political landscape. Furthermore, inappropriate comments made in Parliament are testament to exactly who we should not be voting for. Honorable judges, our democracy starves for genuine debate. Too often, we only see our political candidates at carefully scripted and rehearsed rallies. Public prime ministerial debates would shatter this facade, allowing us to see the true intentions and convictions of those who wish to lead our nation. Furthermore, our proposed debate format ensures an unbiased discussion, with live recording that allows every word to be replayed, thus furthering transparency. And with real-time fact-checking, candidates can simply dish out lies. We must demand more than a manifesto of false promises. This prime ministerial debate also provides a platform for party leaders beyond the big two, giving them the visibility they need to share their vision. This shift pushes us away from our antiquated voting habits and opens doors to a diversified political landscape. Fellow citizens, we must raise the bar. A debate isn't just a nice to have, it is a must have. Because we're not just choosing a leader, we're reshaping our political future. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Jaheim Nicholas of Astor Boys College, San Fernando, please take the floor.
With regard to the scripted debates comment, the scripted debates Jabari made, you know, you could script a public debate as well. You just had to rehearse, just as what we all do here right now. You know that, right? Right. So, from the age of 5, I was a tender little child, and I always wanted to be the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Let that sink in, because I am serious. Right. So, as a future candidate, I ask you to assess me not on how eloquent I speak the Queen's English, which, by the way, Dr. Rosenthal, a renowned psychologist, highlights that humans mistake polished speech for competence due to implicit biases in communication style. Assess my character. Do I have a history of honesty among candidates, communities, constituents, and my peers? Or do I just speak empty words, you know? How all the politicians just say, I'll pave your roads, but, you know, those only do it during election time, right? So, my colleague has shown that debates don't predict the polls. So I focus on something that does not reflect true leadership. So I ask you to assess me or any future candidates on their capabilities. Can I responsibly manage affairs of a country? Political scientist James Burns argues leaders should not be measured by rhetoric, but by their ability to create real change and guide people through challenges. Leadership, like building a business, requires sound decision, which increases profits and allows for sustainable salaries. Assess my qualifications. Do I hold a degree, diploma, certificate that is related to government? Do I have experience in public roles, like counselor, lawyer, unionist, that prepare for leadership? You know, they talk about human interaction, right? But Squilla from Animal Farm, he interacted with well and farming happened. Thank you.
This concludes the third and final head-to-head of Make Your Point Season 3, the quarterfinal round. Judges, your feedback.
I'm going to start with San Fernando Central. Asia Lee, loved how you came up to the lectern with power, confidence, and grace. I think you delivered your points clearly, and it connected. Really good job in terms of taking us through why it was important, and it felt real. The one thing I want you to be mindful of is that As long as you're on the stage, you're in the game and it's live. So you walk back to the table, and as you sat down, you dropped the mask and you dropped your guard. And you kept your guard dropped for the rest of the segment. So keep that in mind, okay? So that it doesn't only end while you're at the lectern, wait till the final bell. In terms of your colleague, excellent job in terms of your pace of points. I think I loved how you opened. Your opening was a great counterpoint to the last jab thrown. And I think it landed. Well delivered, great pace. You didn't wait for the bell to wrap up your segment. You were in control. To my friends across at Astra, great start. Mario, I know you had your cards on the lectern, but I thought where you may have struggled was in the transition of the points. So great opening, you came out strong, you weren't afraid to challenge, you caught us with the attention. I love the quote at the start. But I thought that the transition between the points made, it left too many gaps open, and it felt then that if you didn't transition from one card to the next, that you weren't strong. And to your colleague, great start, you looked in control, but your voice didn't match the words. So your voice was in control, but the points made weren't. So you tried your best to counter Jabari at the very beginning, but I felt it didn't land. So even though your body language is really good and you're confident and your voice was in control, the actual point being made didn't land as effectively as I thought it could have landed.
All right, well, starting with San Fernando Central, I like the sequence of the debates that you outlined that, well, on a first world stage, they have the presidential debates, and so it would make sense for us to adopt it for certain reasons. That policy is greater than personality, and that is stressed in a public debate or emphasized. What I was looking for was in the summary. They also mentioned policy versus personality, but they had a different take on it. They said that the debate emphasizes the personality more than the policy, whereas you said the opposite. So what I was looking for you to just clarify that a little bit, I have one criticism. So now transitioning to Ashdod Boys. I liked how you outlined that there are times where we had a public debate, and like when the Hugo Chavez example, and yet it led to a negative outcome because it wasn't a true reflection of that person's leadership capabilities. That was well done, and to outline that it's mostly unproductive according to certain statistics. That 44% is mudslinging, if you really were to analyze it. That was well outlined. However, I would say the way you structured it, as soon as you were going to assess the alternatives, because whenever you're saying, hey, this is not going to work, it's a good rule of thumb to, again, have your own alternatives. But I propose that this will work. So it's important for you to go down that avenue. It was important for you to do that. But unfortunately, the time limit got to you a little bit. And I think you should have structured it in such a way where you could have fleshed out the alternatives a little more.
What I would say coming in, Modsec, it was your debate to lose, right? And actually you came in with confidence, with clarity, you laid out the argument. I like that you propose a structure, whether we agree with the structure or not. It does show some thought into how this will work and how, why, right? And how you propose to address some of the potential pitfalls. Jabari, I thought you came in and you pretty much repeated those points. The only thing new was that it might have given small parties a chance to showcase, but you didn't really go into, you didn't go into that. So I didn't feel the summary addressed some of the counterpoints that were raised. Astra, I did not envy your position coming in, and I wasn't sure how you were going to argue it. I thought you all did a fantastic job in the research and providing very clear reasons why one could think about opposing what seems like a most logical proposition. And so Mario, I thought you did very, very well. I am going to disagree with my judges. I liked your style, I liked how you presented, and I felt that you came across both confident in speaking and confident in the information.
Thank you, judges. What an insightful and remarkable debate. Congratulations to both teams. We now take another short break to allow our judges time to confer and make their decision as to which 4 schools will progress to the semi-final round of Make Your Point Season 3. This is Make Your Point Season 3, and the results are in. Congratulations to all 6 schools joining me on stage. Let's give them a well-deserved round of applause. The 3 schools moving on automatically to the semi-finals of Make Your Point Season 3 are San Fernando Central Secondary School, Fatima College, and Naparima Girls High School. And the final spot goes to, by way of the highest tally of points among these 3 remaining schools, goes to Astra Boys College, San Fernando. Let's give another loud round of applause for the schools who got this far and now exit the competitions with their heads high for their remarkable showing. I would now like to ask a representative from each of our 4 schools to draw from our ballot box to determine their topic and position ahead of the next competition stage. San Fernando Central Secondary School, Fatima College, Naparima Girls High School, and finally, Astra Boys College, San Fernando. A reminder that the letter P is for proposition and O for opposition on the numbers 10 and 11. The numbers, of course, signifying the next 2 topics of this competition to be debated. This concludes the quarterfinal round of Make Your Point Season 3. Please join us again next Tuesday at 8 p.m. on CNC3 for the semi-finals to watch these 4 schools debate. What an incredible round of quarterfinal debates. Each team has made their schools, communities, and our nation proud. Our debaters have demonstrated their commitment to excellence. And thank you to our judges, Jason Julian, Group Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Business Generation for Citizens, Nirad Tiwari, AmCham CEO, and Jonah Budrat, Make Your Point Season 2 National Champion. Congratulations once again to all schools progressing. San Fernando Central Secondary School, Fatima College, Naparima Girls High School, and Astra Boys College, San Fernando. This is Make Your Point Season 3, and I'll see you at the semifinals.